Okay, so hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of AI and Oats, which is my daily show where I answer some AI questions and talk about pieces of AI news. But if you're new here, welcome. Who am I? Well, my name is Alistair. This is my YouTube channel where I teach Claude Code and Codex for knowledge work and business use cases. But I also run an AI consulting and training business called Dux. And if you own or run a business and would be interested in seeing how AI could be implemented and working with us, then feel free to get in touch through the link in the description. And I also have a school community where I go into more details about my actual skills and setups for Claude Code and Codex. But anyway, now that the preliminaries are out of the way, let's jump into the questions. Right, so basically the way this works is during the day, Codex, I have a Codex automation that goes and looks at various Reddit forums and news sites and kind of collates interesting questions and builds this slide deck, and then I come and react to the questions, answer them, but often end up just talking about something random. I'm going to be honest, I've had a little look at the questions today. Codex has not done me a solid here. It's not the most interesting questions, so apologies for that, but hopefully we'll find something to talk about. Right, Claude Max 20x or Codex Pro 5x. I assume the main question here is like rate limits. I think I'm going to say Claude Max 20x. I think I just saw a tweet actually, or an X post saying that some people are complaining that they think Codex have like reduced the rate limits secretly, and that could be true. I'm going to be honest. This week was the first week I got. I think I went up to like 97%, 96% of hitting my usage limit for the week, which I almost never ever hit my usage limit for the week. So the only time, as I've said in the past, I've done that before is when I was doing everything on ultra and fast with 5.6 sol when it first came out, which was obviously a bit stupid, but I was just trying to see how far I could push it. But yeah, so I think that is possible. But one thing I was just noticing someone suggesting actually in response to this question is get the 5x plan on both of them, which I think is not a bad idea, actually. But for me personally, Claude Max for me, I'd say like, even though Codex limits are better, I don't think 5 times Pro is going to get you better than 20 times Max on Claude. And I still think, as I say all the time, that Fable 5 is the best model available. I think that's kind of general consensus. I'm not like claiming anything groundbreaking there. But like last night, actually, I was using Claude a lot again. Claude Code, because as I say, I use Codex quite often, but this week I actually was butting up against my usage limits. So last night I was going back heavily into Claude Code, and it does remind me why I kind of fell in love with Claude Code in the first place. Especially so I talked about the design skill they added to Claude Code, and it's really good. I really like it. Let me see if I like what it allows you to do. So basically this is using the design skill, and it makes these like I guess it looks a bit, not that I use Figma all the time, but it's like a kind of Figma looking thing, but it's like a canvas where you can put the various designs. So it's like, this is one design. What I was making here was just some like cold email assets. And like, this is one design. And then this design, like, started adding like handwritten stuff to it. That was quite cool. And then I think this is like quite a nice design, I mean, yeah, it looks a little bit, I'd say it looks kind of generic, but not totally generic. Like, I think that it definitely looks better than like kind of your general AI, new age AI slot, as I was describing the other day, whereas it looks nice, but you can tell it's AI. And I can certainly think on this third, so these were like 3 consecutive passes, and I certainly think like some of these like highlighted elements here are nice, and I think this is a nice pass, to be honest. Various typography or fonts, whatever. And I think the fact that all 3 of these were shown, kind of generated like this vertical. All the verticals represent different attempts, as I was saying. So the fact that all three of these came in one go of new iteration shows that there is much more variation, I think, from the new design skill. And as I kind of hoped they would, it seems that they've imported essentially the capabilities of Claude Design directly into Claude Code. And like, I don't know, I think you can, oh yeah, you can like move stuff around. Okay, so that is actually very cool. I didn't want to do that, but that is cool. What does this do? Oh, and I can leave comments. Okay. So yeah, as you can tell, I haven't used it extensively yet, but I'm pretty impressed with it so far. So, I mean, I expect Codex will respond fairly quickly with something similar. If not, I mean, actually, one thing that's just occurred to me is it might be interesting to go into the actual design, the design skill, go into the actual skill.md and have a look at that. I might go see if I can do that. I think it's going to be this one. Let's see. What does it say then? So, come up with a design philosophy. Okay, focusing on subtle input. 90%. Okay. So, I mean, my plan now that I've found this is I'm just going to take it and copy it over to Codex. Name the movement with 2 words. Interesting. Okay. This is quite an interesting approach, coming up with a philosophy that you then apply. It makes perfect sense. And when I was designing my own design skill, this is kind of the approach I took as well. I think this design skill is probably superior to the one I made, so I'm going to try to update mine. The idea that I was having was you think a bit about the actual content that is being generated, think what kind of category does this fall into, and then consult a bank of examples of good website design or good product, good UI design for each category. And so I feel like that is kind of what this tries to, I feel like this is kind of the approach this is taking as well. I expect this probably does it better. Yeah, avoid redundancy. That's very useful. They should put that. I mean, that's when you're working with AI. That's a sort of perennially apt instruction, I would argue. Okay, philosophy examples: concrete poetry, philosophy, communication through monumental form and bold geometry, visual expression, massive color blocks, sculptural typography, brutalist spatial divisions. Another one, chromatic language, philosophy, color is the primary information system, visual expression, geometric precision where color zones create meaning, typography, minimal. Okay, so this is also just, I guess, an example of a good skill, because obviously it's made by Anthropic, but what you can see here is like a good skill contains examples, but apparently, the real thing should be longer than this, but that is the kind of thing you want in skills, as well as the sort of rules about the guidelines and how one goes about how the model forms these philosophies. It then gives examples. So this is just kind of good learning on how you should write skills and audit them and that sort of thing. This is what I think is an interesting step, and probably what makes it actually the difference, because subtlety and nuance is, I think, what allows you to get differentiated designs, and therefore should steer away from just generic slop. Because I did think that perhaps just a new design skill will just lead to a new age of slop, but I think if it's more about actually kind of taking an evaluation of I think this philosophy first approach of this skill, which I'm only discovering now upon reading it, actually should hopefully lead us away from kind of homogeneous AI designs. So this is very interesting. So and then make a canvas. Okay, so I think this is a very, very I think this is a very interesting skill, and I'm basically just going to copy it into Codex now. I will do that as soon as I finish filming this. So, a little bit unrelated to the original question, but as I said, we don't have the best ones today, so we're having to make the most of what we have. OpenAI hit the brakes, now what? Yeah, I mean, this is in reference to the thing I was mentioning yesterday, which is that OpenAI, like, I don't know if they're stopping. Yeah, I think they are stopping, but certainly slowing down their reinforcement learning for their new models, which is interesting. And as some people have pointed out, that is slightly more concerning than just like what Anthropic have done, which is build Mythos but say they can't release it. This is OpenAI perhaps being truly concerned if they're actually wishing to stop it, because I guess the issue is, if you do build a superintelligence, I'm not saying this is necessarily a superintelligence, but if you build a superintelligence and it's misaligned, then once you've built it, presumably if it's more intelligent than you are, containment of it is perhaps very difficult at that point, because it can potentially outsmart you, I would imagine. But what are the implications of OpenAI hitting the brakes? I mean, well, there's a question, is it kind of a marketing thing like Mythos was, like Fable 5 was? I'm not saying it was entirely marketing, there are safety concerns around it, obviously, but I feel like there were elements of marketing there when they were like, oh, it's so dangerous, we can't release it. I imagine probably this is going to lead to more regulation around AI and the pace of AI, which is probably not a bad thing, given the potential negative effects of a misaligned superintelligence. I guess some people are arguing that you shouldn't slow down because Chinese labs will catch up, but then I think the flip side of that argument is that, well, actually Chinese labs are just distilling a lot of the Anthropic and OpenAI models, and that by slowing down the US frontier labs, it's not that Chinese labs are going to overtake them. I think that's probably a fairly valid argument, but I'd say you can't be certain about that. I don't really want to get into a whole discussion of the open weight versus closed debate here and what the implications of this is, because I don't feel like on the spot I have thought through my position enough and the implications of AI pausing reinforcement learning, what that means for whether it kind of raises awareness and wants more open weight models. I'm not sure, so I won't go into that right now. However, I also think it doesn't really matter that much right now, because as I have mentioned before, I still think that so many businesses, especially big enterprise businesses and stuff, so many people are so far behind. The average person probably doesn't even know that Claude Code exists, or Codex for that matter, or certainly doesn't know a fraction of the things you can do with Codex or Claude Code. I think, perhaps if you're watching this YouTube channel, or, I certainly know that my kind of content diet of AI stuff from X, from YouTube, feels like everyone knows so much about these tools, but to be honest, the vast majority of people still have no idea of the capabilities of them. So although what you see on X and everything makes you feel super far behind, you're still way ahead just by knowing that Codex and Claude Code even exist. And so my general point with that is, as I've said before, as nice as it is to have the most intelligent models like Fable 5 and that sort of thing, in all likelihood you are not pushing them to the absolute maximum capability of their intelligence, and you could still do a lot of work with older models, especially with a good harness and with a good context environment built for them in the form of folder structure, which you might call an AI operating system. And so I think, even if we pause getting to GPT-6, for example, I still think there is so much growth and so much kind of economic disruption and hopefully kind of, GDP growth that will come from the implementation of AI. I think there'll also be huge labour market disruption beyond what we're seeing already from AI. Not necessarily saying that we'll end up with fewer jobs. I think there'll be a huge change in the jobs people do, and therefore there will be certainly a brief period of turmoil and kind of suffering for many people who are losing their current job because there's no point in that current job, or like people my age who are trying to graduate and go into jobs because you probably only need about 20% of the entry-level workers you have at the moment in terms of headcount. You just need them to be proficient at managing AI agents, because you're not going to need them to be doing loads of financial modeling in spreadsheets. You're just going to need them to send off a Claude Code session to go do that using Claude in Excel or something, and then have them check it and sense check it and aggregate it. And you're not going to need loads of analysts at a bank to be moving logos around on PowerPoint because you can have AI do that sort of thing. So headcount presumably goes down, but I think in all likelihood these people then either start their own companies or new roles are created for them. So I don't think it's absolutely catastrophic in terms of the long term. I think probably new jobs will be created in the form of a proliferation of many smaller companies. However, there will be a period where people, it becomes a necessity in many ways to retrain and become fluent, AI fluent or whatever you want to call it. Certainly proficient at managing agents. That's the current high value skill, in my opinion, to leverage your actual output. And so I guess my overall point is that the state of the frontier of AI and the impact of AI on the economy are, yes, correlated, but the impact on the economy lags so significantly far behind the frontier that a brief pause in the frontier does not necessitate any slowdown in the rate of adoption and change from AI, really, in terms of its economic effects, helping businesses grow. That's my take. And I'm sure they'll start reinforcement learning soon enough anyway, to be honest. Best AI agent for prompts generation. Interesting. I assume this is like going to an agent and saying, I'm trying to write a prompt for this, do this. I use Claude, Claude for that, well, Claude Code, but Claude. I also use ChatGPT, so as in in Codex. I always work in Codex or Claude Code pretty much, so I don't think there's a huge difference. I think the main thing is just context. Off the top of my head, Claude is pretty good at generating prompts for video and image generation that I then get it to send to Higgsfield using the MCP. But quite frankly, so is GPT 5.6. Likewise, I've both had them generate prompts for Suno for making music. GPT 5.6 was pretty good at that. I think the main thing is just explaining the goal. I don't think prompt engineering is not as important as it once was in a way, but that is for this reason precisely, which is that you now have agents doing prompt generation. If you actually look, one thing I like to do, this is going to sound very nerdy and sad, but no, it's not. It is quite cool if you're into this stuff, which you probably are if you've watched 20 minutes of this video so far, roughly. Is that you can see, when you do a Claude Code session, and then it says one running task, and it spawns off another little agent. Certainly in the old UI, I don't know if they've slightly changed it now. You could go click on that agent and see the message Claude, the big orchestrating agent, the main session had sent to it. And those were super detailed, very long prompts. A bit like what you see with a skill.md. A skill.md is basically a frozen prompt, just even larger than a prompt. And my routines as well, like the routines I have, like my daily operator routine, which is every day Fable 5 strategizes a high leverage task to move my business forward and plans it, and then has sub-agents execute it and then reviews it. And then I come home and see what it's done. But all my routines run by saying like, okay, go look at the prompt.md. And that's a fairly long markdown file that is an in-depth prompt. So prompt engineering is not necessarily I don't think prompt engineering is gone as a discipline. I think it's just a discipline that has started to be taken over by the AI models themselves. And so in response to this question, I don't think it's necessarily a question of like which agent is the best for prompting or for prompt generation. I think any of the kind of frontier ones are going to be quite good. I guess if you think about it, it's probably quite. I don't necessarily have the like authority or experience to make this claim, but I would imagine that it's probably a like high leverage skill. If you're developing an AI model, especially one intended to be used within a coding harness, any agentic harness like Codex, like Claude Code, it's probably very much in your interest to have it be very good at writing prompts, because it's in your interest to have it be able to orchestrate sub-agents effectively, which therefore means it needs to be able to prompt them well. Just like the way it's in your interest for it to become very good at coding, because if it becomes very good at coding, you can use it to train future models, and that's how you get like recursive self-improvement and that sort of thing. So I guess what I'm saying here is, I think that as long as you give them enough context about what you're trying to do, most of the frontier models will be very good at prompt generation. But you don't even necessarily ever need to see those prompts, because they can just be handed off between agents. And yeah, I mean, there's no harm in checking them, but yeah. Alright, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Hopefully there was some useful stuff in there. I know the questions weren't the most interesting, but hopefully we managed to make it into something a little bit more informative by going into that stuff about Claude's new design skill and that sort of stuff. So I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. If you did find it interesting, please feel free to subscribe. And just to mention again, if you own or run a business and you're interested in implementing AI to grow your company and grow your revenue, or even if you're just any form of knowledge worker and you'd like to get better at using Claude Code and Codex for your work and build out your own AI operating system, and you'd like me to help you with that, please feel free to get in touch through the link in the description. And again, just to mention, if you're interested in the school community, that will be in the description too. But that will be it for today. So thanks very much for watching, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.